Hello. Today, I'm gonna show you guys how to make a sad song. Whoop. Oh, that right there. Boom. This looks horrible as I'm recording it because there's no explosions. But whoop. You know, we're gonna make a sad song. Things you'll need: FL Studio. I recommend a keyboard, mouse, keyboard. Not this one. Typing keyboard. Let's jump right in. I'm so sorry. Let's jump right into this thing, shall we? All right. First thing to a sad song. I recommend using a grand piano. Grand pianos, when used the right way, can sound very sad. You have to use minor chords. That sounded like a major chord. There we go. Gotta use sad chords. So, we're gonna be using this scale. So it's C, C sharp, D sharp, F, G, G sharp, A sharp, and those are all the notes. So we're gonna use that scale because I like it and it sounds cool and it sounds kind of sad when used in the right way. For example, let's just get an idea down. So the first thing I want to do is just, mess around with a couple chords. So I already like that one. So we could do a little something like that. We don't even have to use a chord. We could just use notes. So let's go ahead and find where this note is. Where are you? So that's way too fast. Remember, adjust your tempo. You don't want your song sounding completely different and too fast than how you want it. So, still too fast. Usually slow songs are pretty sad. And sad songs are pretty slow. So let's hear this. It's currently looping right now, but it sounds pretty good. Alright, so we'll do that twice. Turn off the metronome. We'll move a couple keys up to try and get a little higher pitch sound. For this, it would be our bass note, a little bit up, a little bit higher, and then go back. So that bass note is called home. So you gotta take it back home. So I like that. So let's get that down. And then we could have this as our final one. So when it loops, it goes back to the home and it sounds complete. After listening to that last part, I don't want to use the same first note as our home. So we'll we'll change it up. So this is still part of our scale, so we could try moving this down a little bit. See, that sounds better. When that final measure starts out with a note that is lower than the first one, when it loops, it will sound more complete. So you'll hear this where it's which sounds good at the end. Like this is at the end, this is at the start. So it kind of bumps up. So it has a flow. So we'll place our pattern in the song area. We'll change this to song so we can hear it on this. And today for the sad song, I want to replicate something similar to Joji. And something that Joji usually does is combines hip-hop and lo-fi and alternative and sad, just a lot of sad music combined with R&B, hip-hop, etc. So today we're going to be doing something similar to that. So what Joji likes to do is use 808s. 808s is similar to what I was talking about before. Anything with a number in a label, 707s will sound retro. 808s will sound pretty modern. 909s, they usually sound a bit more techy. So 808s sound very modern because a lot of modern rap artists still use them. Also remember, FL Studio turns up these all the way, so you gotta turn them down. So for now, we'll put them on every first beat of a measure. And then, with this, we'll Control A. We'll lengthen all these notes a little bit by about 3 times. So if the note was 2 spaces long, then it's going to be 3 times as big, which is 6 spaces long. Which gives it an extended feeling, which is like it's playing a chord. So the notes are able to come together and flourish. So it gives us this little edge, but that's okay. So we're going to cut it off until that last note plays, and then when we place another pattern, eventually, it'll layer over nicely, and you'll be able to see it. So don't try and cut it off unless you are just trying to loop one area at the moment, which is what I'm going to do. Just cut it off temporarily, and later on we will extend it again, and then add the other patterns. So the 808s, what the 808s do is gives a bit of a bassy boost feeling. It's a nice accent. That's a lot of what the things are in music. In drums, it's a nice accent. It's percussion. Everything needs to be in a layer. There needs to be a part that is bass, a part that is middle, and a part that is high. When you have all those things, it's like a sandwich. You can't have one thing without the other. You can't have bass without the mids. You can't have the mids without the highs. Bass is like the bread. Mids is like the sandwich meat. The highs are like the sauce. You want all of them together. All of them together sound way better than just a couple of them. You get a very balanced song, and you get a very balanced sandwich. So right now, we currently have the mids and the lows. But we want a bit of highs, and we probably want more mids, because this sounds a little bland right now, even though we did a really good job on the chords. So what we're going to do is get some other percussion. We're going to get some hi-hats. And remember, look for 808. 808 drums usually sound more hip-hop and more modern. And that's what we're going for Joji. Remember to turn down your sounds in FL Studio. So we can hear out sounds. We want a closed hi-hat for now. So we'll place it on every other. Alright, now these are all laid out. We have the highs. So that hi-hat hits the high part of the frequency. So we have the bass, which is the 808s, gets the low part of the frequencies. We have the mids, which is the piano. Sits right about in the mids and the highs, right about there, depending on how high-pitched the piano is. And then the highs we have for hi-hats. But we want some more mids, so let's get a snare in there. So for a snare, again, look for 808s, which that sounds pretty good. We're gonna turn that down. And we want a little bit of rhythm, so we want something almost a little unexpected, but still groovy. We want to keep a rhythm, but we also want to keep it a little not very repetitive, the same thing over and over and over again, like we did with the hi-hats and we did with the kicks. So we want something a little bit different. So one thing that I've came across many times is that stuff won't line up with my bars. And what I do for that, instead of doing that, oh, that's like most of my snare gone. So what I'm going to do is take this little thing right here, it's a slice tool, put it at the line, go up, cut it, go onto the pencil, hold it down, right click so it's on the delete, and just tap it. And then move it back up. So you have it all in one line, so it's more organized. And you can click on this to copy it. You can paste it as many times, and it's now cut very nicely. So what we're going to do is take this little bar, or these two bars right here, and go ahead and take the select tool, Control C, pencil tool, drag the top, or we could just simply click onto the next one, Control V, and drag it where we want it to be. So it was about right there. So the thing about FL Studio is that when it loops stuff, it will loop it until everything's finished. So even stuff that's overlapping a little bit, it'll still loop it over. Unless, when you're looping, you double click on the top, drag, and highlight that one part. But I don't like to do that just because I don't like seeing it all red. I don't know if that's like a diagnosis of some sort where it's like an OCD thing. I wouldn't know. I'm not diagnosed with OCD. I'm not self-diagnosing myself. I just don't like it. I don't like to see it. So I could just do the thing I did earlier. Take the slice tool, snip off the front, and it'll loop very nicely without any excess. So I want to do a little bit more with our kicks. So what I want to do is kind of shorten these so I can fit some more into that area. And the reason why I want to shorten them to fit more in the area is because let me show you what happens when I overlay one kick closer to another kick. See that? It automatically softens it and blends it together, which we don't want. We want punchy kicks. So shorten it. But if you're like, oh, Mike, it doesn't look good because it immediately cuts it off and it doesn't let it fade out. Well, you know what you could do? Drag this little triangle on the top when you hover over, slide it over. So it still gets faded out. And this triangle thing right here is for volume. So it will fade out or on the other side, fade in. And if you want to increase the volume in general, go on the bottom. And this controls the volume, but we want to keep it at 0 because we already adjusted it in here. So let's go ahead and get that. So we want a little bit of rhythm. So I like how this first part was sounding. Okay, it's coming together pretty well. Now, the reason why I'm looping this like this and laying out my stuff like this is to kind of give myself a demo for what the middle of the song is going to sound like and for what you're trying to go for. So, what we want to do now is add a little bit more bass. So what we can do, press the plugin icon right there, search up Flex, and this is where you could find our mobile tuned 808 bass. And then we want something clean, because a lot of these, they'll sound too crunchy, but we want something clean that's in the background. You can't detect it, but you could audibly hear that there's bass. So let's create a new pattern. New pattern. And get some of that bass in there. So we'll lay this pattern out on the song area so we can hear it as it's playing. Let's decide what we're going to do with this. Even though you can't really detect what pitch is being played, it's still nice to play different pitches because it'll accent whatever else is there. I just laid out a little pattern right here. C, C, C sharp, A sharp. So now that we have most of this stuff laid out, it would be a good time to put our stuff in the mixer. So grand piano, first slot, 808 kick, second slot, 808 closed hat, third slot, snare, fourth slot, 808 clean, fifth slot. So now if we click on this little mixer icon, full screen, we'll be able to see all of our stuff. Right click on the little button icons to hear it solo. You can left click on other ones to unmute them. So what we'll do is adjust the volumes of some of this stuff. But when you do this, I suggest listening to it all together. To have it evenly balanced, I suggest listening to all of it together so you could hear it. If you do it only individually and you think, oh, this sounds good, let me turn it up, but you have nothing to compare it to, it might be close to the red, which very loud parts, which we don't want because it might cut off some stuff. So when you have it all together, you have stuff to compare it to. So for right now, we're gonna mess with the drums. So this is also gonna be a little lesson on mixing. For mixing, let's do the kick drum. So we're not gonna adjust the volume or anything right now. We're just gonna adjust the EQ. So we'll do it just with this. So this is for low, this is for mid, this is for high. The different knobs down here. Let's do mid for an example. This knob controls the positioning from left to right. So I currently have it right about in the middle. This controls how thick or thin that one peak is. So if you want a wider spread, then you would adjust it. So what we want is a more bassy sounding 808. Because we want to really feel that rumble in our headphones when we're listening to this, or the speakers in your car when everyone else is listening to it, and you hear the rumble. Let's turn up the lows. You can immediately hear a difference. So what we can do is move this over a little bit, So it gets more of those frequencies, and you can hear it, that it's a bit more enhanced. So this sounds pretty good, but we want it a little bit quieter, so we'll lower this a little. There we go. And I think it's a nice little bump. It shapes it a little, and it makes it sound a bit better than how it originally did. So let's do the hi-hat. So hi-hats are usually near mids to highs, so we'll adjust those, and we want to accentuate any part that this is in, mids and highs. For hi-hats, they are in the mids and highs area, so you want to accentuate that. So go over here, maybe bump it up a little, open up that spread, turn it up a little, and now you can hear the difference. Now it sounds very sharp. That's what we want for a hi-hat. So both of these sound pretty good together. Now for the snare. A snare is pretty tricky. I've had problems with snares before, but they're usually in the mids. So we'll accentuate the mids a little, widen this, go up a little. We'll do a little bit of highs, and a little bit of lows. All right, so it's pretty even. So let's listen to this. And it sounds pretty good. And to make sure that you aren't going too far over and too loud, you can look on here, or you can look on here. So I can see that we are getting a little high. So what I'm going to do is take away some things and see if that makes any difference. So I see the snare is a little loud, so we'll turn that down just a hair. And the hi-hats are also a little loud, so we'll turn that down just a smidge, which made it sound a little bit better, and it's less aggressive. And then you can see the bass gets it up to the red. So we're going to turn that down just a little bit. Now, what we also want to do is get a nice spread. So when you're listening to something, you don't want it to sit right here. You want it to sit around you, because when it sits around you, it's like stereo. So it's all around you, and it sounds like a more immersive experience. And it sounds a lot better than everything being clumped in the middle. So what we're going to do is put the hi-hat on our left, just a little bit, and our snare to our right. So we'll keep that kick right in the middle, just to get it all evened out. So we'll check on our piano, and from what we could hear, from the notes and the chords we laid out, we can hear that there are some lows and some mids. So we want to accentuate those. And we don't want to, this will automatically like adapt to that area, so we want to get this pretty sharp. Just get one little area. Yeah, so that's sounding pretty good. Let's hear the bass. Let's hear the bass drum, the kick, hi-hat, snare. Now let's hear that 808. Let's solo out just the 808. So, very bassy, but we're not getting it. I think we could use a little bit more of that bass. So, hear that? Too much, but just a little bit more. Turn it down just a smidge. Move it up. Turn this down a little bit. And then what we're going to do is at the bottom, right here, it's stereo separation. So moving it this way will separate it more. Moving it the other way to the right will move it towards the middle. So we'll move it towards separated. So it will be left and right, and not just in the center. So let's hear everything else. So it sounds pretty good, but I think we want to add a little bit more to the piano. So we'll add chords instead of individual notes at one time. So we'll go an octave lower, because if we were to do chords right here, it would all get jumbled up together, and it would be hard to distinguish the chords from the individual notes. So we'll go an octave lower. We don't even have to do chords. We could do one note, or we could do a chord. 2 notes. I think 1 note sounds better. We'll cut that in half, and then we'll add a little bit of variation. Alright, so we got a little bit of variation in here now. So, we have a lot of it built out. So we're going to do another pattern of the piano. With another pattern of the piano, we'll get rid of everything. We're doing another pattern because for a whole song, we want variation between the things. We want beginning, build up to the climax, end. Everything in the beginning builds up to the climax. And at the climax is the peak point of the song. That's the most interesting point of the song. So we are going to do the climax part. And with the climax, you want to do something pretty different than what you had done before in the beginning. So we'll do something different, obviously, but we'll stay in the same key. We won't change out of these notes that we were already in. So we'll do some chords at the end instead of the individual notes. So for just the pattern. So we have our home. And then we want to do something that would sound good enough in flow to our home. So we'll do, which is slightly different than our middle part right here, which was right after our home. Which I think sounds pretty well, because we have this, our home, second one, down lowest, and goes back to something that sounds pretty similar to what was after our second beat, our second chord. So we want this a little bit longer. So Control A, Control C, go to the next one, paste it. So we have this so far, first 4 measures. And then we want to change up that second little part, so it isn't just a loop. You know, how about we go, instead of the lowest, we do the highest. Let's move up a little. And then we have, and then we'll go 1 lower. Which, right here, sounds very well with the highest. And this last one sounds very similar to our home, so it's a nice transition to the beginning of our pattern. What we can do is start building out most of our song now. So what we'll do, select all of this, pencil, move it over, since this is pretty much the middle of our song. So move it over, take the pattern, put it in the beginning, see how we extended it after cutting it off to loop, put it in the beginning. So it starts off. So we don't want to just immediately jump right into it. It does sound nice, but I think we'd like to ease in whoever is listening. So let's get in that sub bass, the 808. And then right before the song starts, at this last little part, we'll do two snares. So 2 snare hits, which will kind of introduce us to what's about to happen. And I think that sounds good. It's a very nice intro. So it's a very nice intro because it gives us a simple beat so far with a nice sub bass in the background. Two snare hits and jumps us right in. So let's do a little bit more with pattern 2. So this does, it sounds good, but we need some bass. So a suggestion that I have for making bass notes is trying to follow along with some of the notes that are in this. So if you see D sharp in here, that's the lowest. So we can go ahead and take the easy route and copy it. C sharp, the lowest. Go to make that a bass. Just by making another one. And then this F goes very well with it because it's a part of our scale. And then D also goes well with it because it's part of our scale. So I think that sounds pretty good. So when we transition over to the climax, which this isn't exactly song pattern, but it's a very basic version of our song. So when we transition, we might want to do something similar to the intro. Right now, no sub bass. Add another pattern. Get that sub bass back in there. And it's okay that we use it because it's the same key that we were using before. And then now, after that, we'll add in our drums. So for our drums, we'll do something a little bit different. Just a little bit. So we'll basically copy and paste this into there, because we're only going to change it up just a little bit. So we'll get rid of the constant hi-hat. So we'll change this up a little. And another part that I didn't mention just yet about a climax is you want to typically add in a new instrument or something new. Just for a little bit of something extra. So we'll add in another piano pattern, because we could just do more piano, but have a bit of accents. So we want to check where these notes line up, and we might want to go higher or lower so it doesn't get all jumbled together. So go ahead and put this here so we will hear it when it's playing. I think that sounds pretty good. So go ahead and copy that. I want to get two little loops of that. And then what we could do is bring it back to the beginning. This is going to be our outro. And put the sub bass. And we could also keep this other piano. And at the end, we're going to cut it off. So we could just hear that nice sparkly piano that we added earlier, the pattern 3. And that's it. That's basically the song. So we'll go ahead and play this out as I do my little outro. So I thank all you guys for watching. I really hope you appreciate this video. I work very hard on my music. I am Mike the First, Bandlab. I try my best to upload. I'm going to be trying more to upload. I hope you learned something today. If you didn't, that's okay. At least you got some good information out of this. You got or possibly entertainment. I'm very happy that you guys are watching. I'll catch you guys later.